Welcome back to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We couldn't do these without the incredible support of our sponsors, and we want to take a moment to say thank you to all of them. First, thanks to our diamond sponsor, Varsity Brands, including BSN, Varsity Spirit, and Herff Jones. Varsity Brands, elevating student experiences in sport, spirit, and achievement. We also want to thank our platinum sponsors, including Hometown Ticketing, simple and easy online ticketing. Vital Signs, bring student achievements to life. Gipper, sports graphics made incredibly simple. Ephesus Lighting, innovating a brighter future at every level. And Camp Mobile, where leaders communicate better. Thanks to all of our great sponsors. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. Our guest today is a good friend, Mark Rosenbalm. He's a certified athletic administrator, and he's the director of athletics for the Collier County public school system, which is in the southwest corner of Florida. Mark, welcome to the program.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate being on here.
Well, to our listeners, we're recording this kind of the first week back to school in Florida in early January. So by the time you hear it, hopefully some of the things we talk about, might have changed in a positive direction, but we're going to go and jump right into it. Mark, we always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, where you went to school and college, and maybe how your love of sports has led to this career in athletic administration.
I'd be glad to. I'm originally from Maryville, Indiana. It's northwest corner. It's about 25 minutes outside of Chicago, basically. We were the only little part in Indiana that would actually be on Chicago time, and everyone else would be on the other time. So that was one thing. And again, growing up in Indiana is a lot different than being here in Florida, especially where I'm from. I went to Purdue University on a wrestling scholarship and received my Bachelor of Arts in Education and earned my master's degree here at FGCU, Florida Gulf Coast University, in Ed Leadership. I graduated in 1994, and I received my first teaching job at Martinsville, Indiana, and that's about 20 minutes from Indiana University in Bloomington. Very different makeup from where I'm from, and I'm right outside of Gary, Indiana. Maryville and Gary, Indiana, almost they touch, So I went out to the country. They call Indiana the country. I was in the country, and I taught there for 2 years. I was the head wrestling coach. And just a physical education teacher there. And I was a strength coach. From there, my high school coach, wrestling coach, and my mentor, and I know we'll get there later, but he called me up and says, hey, can you come back to Maryville and teach and coach for us? And so obviously my mentor, I'm 100% in. I said yes. So after 2 years at Martinsville, I moved back to my home high school, which is a whole different experience in itself, because I think my teachers, who were still, some of them were still there when I was there, it's hard to get that colleague sense, because they still think you're a student at that school. So that was an adaptation that I had to do. But I stayed there for 3 years, and then I came down to Florida in Venice for my cousin's wedding. And I said, what am I doing in Northwest Indiana, when there's snow and everything? So I decided to put an application in a Gulf Coast high school, which was just opening in 1999. Put in my app, got an interview, flew down here, and within 3 weeks, I moved down first. My family came down right afterwards, but moved down here because I needed to be at spring football, because I'm also a football coach. So Naples, Florida, here I come. So I just got in my car and off I went. And haven't looked back since. And it's been the best decision that I think I've ever made. So went from Gulf Coast High School, which just opened, stayed there for 5 years. I was a wrestling, football coach, track coach. After the 5 years, a new high school was opening up in my county. It was Palmetto Ridge High School. And so I had the opportunity to become the department head and obviously coach football and track as well as wrestling, my main sport. And so I got to open up that school, which is a great thing. If anyone ever opened up a school, you understand, you start the traditions, you get to start everything from scratch, which is hard, but in a sense, I think it is the greatest thing you can do in a lifetime.
Absolutely, yeah.
So did that for 5 years. And after that, I moved to, or I didn't move, but I applied for the activity coordinator. We're called activity coordinators here in, we're part of the administration. So they're activity coordinators, which means that we're not only over athletics, we're over all activities, clubs, everything you can imagine, we're over in the school besides the academics and the discipline. So it's a pretty big job. And I thought I did what I needed to do in my 20 plus years of coaching. So I said, I want to move into the administration side and I want to be able to mentor coaches, coach the coaches. And so I went to Barron Collier High School. And that was in 2009. And from 2009 to 2013, I was the activities coordinator there. And then obviously I have my ed leadership degree. So I have my, the degree to become part of the curriculum, which I wanted to do. I started finding myself, hey, this was great. Now I want to move into being an assistant principal. So I went and interviewed and accepted a job at Corkscrew Middle School. And I've been in the same county the whole time I've been in Florida. So I took that job. It was a little different. Loved it. You get to see the other end of what the administrators do. So it was just a bunch of more tools to put in my toolbox for where I'm at actually today. So I spent 3 years there. And then this position, which has only been occupied by one individual in our county ever. So I'm the second director of athletics that's ever existed. So he decided to retire after 30 some years. And I applied for it and I was accepted into this position. And that's where I'm at today. So just a little bit about my background. In high school, I was a 3-sport athlete, earned 11 letters at Maryville High School, wrestling, football, and baseball. In college, I was a 4-year letter winner at Purdue. I was academic all Big Ten. I was on the dean's list there. As far as wrestling in high school, my sophomore year, I took 3rd in the state, my junior year, 2nd, and then I eventually was a state champion and a high school All-American in wrestling when I was back in 1989. And college, like I said, proceeded, and then coaching. So where did my coaching come in? Well, obviously, I always wanted to give back because I wouldn't be where I'm at today without the mentors that helped me. And my mentor, and like a second father, was my wrestling coach that actually got me to start wrestling when I was 9 years old. He was with me the whole time. So I wanted to be like they said, well, what do you want to be? I wanted to wrestle in college. And I said, I want to be a teacher. I want to be able to make a difference. So that's what field I went into. And from there, when I graduated, obviously coaching was my, one of my passions. So as a coach, I have coached several sports. Obviously, all of us have. When you've been in this field this long, you've probably coached multiple sports. But I did football, soccer, track, softball, girls golf, and of course wrestling. I was the head coach in just 2 of those, girls golf and wrestling. But as far as my wrestling career my coaching career in wrestling, started out obviously at Gulf Coast down here, Maryville High School up north, Martinsville and Maryville. was pretty successful. Came down here in to Gulf Coast, and then at Palmetto Ridge. And at Palmetto Ridge, I did win a state championship for the FHSAA. I was coach of the year for the FHSAA. I coached 24 state qualifiers, 41 state placers, 7 state runner-up, and 13 state champions in my 5 years at Palmetto Ridge. And that's why I said I think I accomplished everything I wanted to do. I wanted to give back and be a mentor of student athletes like that my coaches did for me. So that's where I'm at there. And that's it.
Oh, well, yeah, that's it. Wow. No, it's always great to hear these stories, and you see some commonalities with our guests and also some unique things. I knew you had quite the background in wrestling, but the other stuff, fantastic. I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. You're a little bit younger than me, but the Purdue connection. Purdue certainly has a reputation for cranking out NFL quarterbacks. Who's the quarterback back in your Boilermaker days?
It was Matt Hunter. And but Mike Allstott was there when I was there.
Okay. Yeah, that's certainly got a
came in afterwards.
Yeah. Mike Allstott certainly has his Florida connections too. So great stuff. You already mentioned your high school coach as far as one of your mentors. And in our business, we talk about the importance of mentoring and leadership so much. Who are a couple other mentors, either, maybe coaches or teachers you had, or maybe people that you've worked with or worked for? The expression I like to use is, I still hear those voices in my head when I'm talking to a kid or a coach or sometimes even a parent. So whose voice do you still hear?
My high school, Tom Cameron, right? He was the guy that I always looked up to. Obviously, my parents were like the greatest attributes for my career, just because they kind of stayed out and they supported me as long as it was my goals and dreams. And so that was a blessing. But, and I know we're going to get to this before, how athletics has changed over the last 20 years. He was a disciplinary for me. If I did something wrong, he can discipline me on the spot. So he was kind of like my second father figure. If I did great, he would praise me, and if I did wrong, he would discipline me. So he was the guy that I looked up to the most. And obviously he was an educator, but he influenced my life the most. Now, here's the sad part of this whole story. When I did get there, because I wanted to be mentored by him, everyone wants to be this head coach and everyone wants to do everything right. When I got to Maryville, not more than 7 months afterwards, he had a heart attack and passed away. So it put me in a spot that made me grow quickly, because I was counting on him on every step, to lead me through every path. And it was hard. It was like I was lost for a little bit, but I think it made me stronger, because like what you said, who do you hear in your head? Every decision I made, what would Coach Cameron do? What would Coach Cameron do? And I think it made me grow a lot quicker than I really wanted to grow as a coach. But I had a lot of people around me. So it wasn't just one. I had a lot of people around me, just guiding me, making me make my own mistakes, because that's the only way we're really going to truly learn from. But they just guided me a lot. So besides another, John Cook was it was actually my wrestling coach's best friend who coached at our rival school. He actually, even though we were coaching against each other because we're rival, he mentored me. And that's how a class act. He didn't care about the wins and he wanted me to mature and grow as a coach. And listen, I made a lot of mistakes my first years of coaching, but he helped me grow to be the coach I was, until I stepped into administration. Roy Terry, who's actually down here, my mentor down here, and he was a head football coach at Morehead State. He coached everywhere in football, but he was the principal that hired me. And now he's actually our school board president. But he mentored me a lot when I got down here. I was 28 years old when I moved down here. And, you think you know everything. And then you get a wise guy like that when I made my mistakes, it's how you get taught after you make the mistakes. If you're going to get scolded and maybe not listen to what's going on. And I think Roy was so kind and passive that he actually made me realize, the mistakes aren't the end of the world. It's what we do from here. And guided me into that whole aspect of the team. It's not about how many wins you get. It's not about this. It's about what you teach people. And I think he's the one that really drilled home to me on look at the biggest picture. There's a bigger picture than you think. And so he was a big mentor when it come down to that aspect on the bigger picture and the athletic program in whole. So it's not just my sport. Like when I was a wrestling coach, it was just, I only cared about wrestling. That was my thing. When you look at the big picture, like he kept trying to tell me, because one year, this is a true story, he took one of my assistant coaches. Now, he was my assistant coach. And he took him and says, you're going to coach basketball for us. And so I went in there, blazing like a young kid. And I was like, wait a minute. What are you doing? I've had this on my program. To be successful, I need him. He says, and he let me just rant and rave. And he said, okay, are you done? And I said, yeah. He goes, okay, now just listen. I understand you're passionate about your program, and that's great. That's why you're here. But I have to look at the big picture and what's best for all of our programs. And he said, right now, your program is going in the right direction. I need this individual and this program so we can make that program go. And until then, I didn't really realize that, because you just get so tunnel vision on your own program, but he wanted what's best for everybody. And I think that's, that was right there, that was a big talking to of, I get it. The light bulb went off. I get it. And so he was a very big part of mine. And then I had my principal at Barron-Collier High School, Tim Coots, who kind of navigated me when you have parent conferences and you have all these conferences in a whole on how to actually conduct them and be professional, to the T on them. And so, he gave me that knowledge on the inside of the administration side of the whole. So had many mentors, but those are just few of the ones that stand out.
Oh gosh, listening to those, it just took me right back to, myself in those same situations, the young coach, storming into the AD's office, and then, years later as the AD, trying to have that same conversation. Reminds me of that John Wooden quote, it's what you learn after you know it all that sets you down the right path. So
absolutely.
Coach, you talked about it a little bit, the changes that, you and I have seen during our careers. I'm wrapping up year 40, you're about 10 years behind me, but obviously, you've seen things from all angles, assistant coach, head coach, successful coach, and now, athletic director. Beyond the technology, obviously, the Zoom and the electronic eligibility and things like that. What are some of the changes that you've seen, both good and maybe not so good, in your time as an athletic administrator? What's changed for the day-to-day AD?
Well, I think it's the communication. I mean, in that everything goes to technology. I get it, but it's like back when we first started this, profession, you had phone trees, you had fax machines, and people got information from students actually taking it home to their parents. And if parents had any questions, they would call you. Now everything is done to where we don't communicate. Everyone throws things on whatever platform they're using. Obviously, that's the biggest. But if you take that out, I think the specialization of athletes, I think that's the biggest. I know it's an issue in my county because everyone wants to make sure that they can be the best at that sport. But I guess I'm still old school. I believe that you should do it all. I think I think we're prone to more injuries because we're doing the same sport so much and you're never getting a rest from it. You know, specifically in baseball, because I was part of baseball programs too. You get more Tommy John surgeries and all that. We didn't have that back then. I'm not saying it didn't exist. It doesn't exist like it does today. And it's because you're pitching 60, 70 games a year now instead of just maybe pitching 12 or 15 because you're doing it year round. I believe you'll be a better athlete in any sport is if you put yourself out there and do multiple sports because you learn stuff from every different sport. You know, I mean, wrestling and football, since, you know, I can talk about that. There's such a big correlation there. And I'm not saying you're going to be a great wrestler because you're a great football player, or if you're a great wrestler, you're going to be a great football player, because that's only time will tell on that. But because of the similarity in the sports, there's a high correlation that's going to make you successful. So I believe that you should do both of those because other coaches are going to teach you different techniques, or they're going to teach you different things, even life lessons. That's going to make you a well-rounded athlete. So I think that is a big difference from back when I was, you know, in the last 20 years, because kids are just one sport. This is what we're doing. You know, that to me, that's the biggest thing outside of the technology. The technology thing is crazy, and it keeps us up at night because we wonder tomorrow what's going to be in the paper, what's going to be on someone's Twitter account that might tarnish our school's athletic department.
I mean, there's no question compared to when we were in school, the specialization. I'm hoping that the pendulum is starting to swing back in the other direction. You know, we have a lot of two-sport athletes at our school, and they find that, and I'm sure it's the same at your school too. The ones that do it, they find that they're feeling refreshed, that they are in better shape, and hey, they're having more fun. Okay, you know, they're not just going to practice for 10 months. They're getting, playing other games. So, and just as you know, competing, especially wrestling. I was a basketball guy, but we had a very successful wrestling program. Our head football coach was the wrestling coach, and we always talked about competing, and you just can't find that, in the neighborhood club sports. You mentioned. Go ahead.
To go along with that on the huge difference, just the position itself has changed. I think the AD position, now you're basically a business leader, you're an educator, you're a coach, you're a psychologist, you're a fundraiser specialist, you're a sports medicine expert. I mean, you're a human resource director. Everything you can imagine now is bundled into probably one of the most underappreciated positions that we have in schools, unfortunately. And that's why I'm trying to make the change here in my position now, is to make everybody understand how much an athletic director or activities coordinator actually does in a school, and how much influence they have over our student athletes.
And you left in that list of things that we do every day, you left off public relations. I've told this a number of times, my mom and dad were like your parents, very supportive of, my athletic career, as long as I did good in grades. But I don't think they would have recognized my head football coach, my head basketball coach, if they passed each other on the street, and vice versa. And now, we need to, and it's a good thing, I guess, but we need to know, who the parents are. We need to be able to have those conversations with them. So just one more thing on the daily list of duties.
No, I understand. Like I said, I mean, I mean, back then you still, schedule the events, our normal stuff. That's what my AD did back when I was in high school. And, like I said, I was an athletic aide for him as well. So I knew a lot of stuff that he did, but just the demands that are expected today of our, athletic directors, and there's a high turnaround. I mean, you can only 60 to 70 hours, you get burned out after eventually so much time. And that's why we have created assistant athletic directors here. It's because I think as time, moves forward, I think the top people in our organizations are starting to understand it because of us and us getting out there and educating everybody else, like going through the ranks and then actually getting into a position where you can sit down with the superintendent. You can sit down with all these people that make these big decisions and get it out there and say, listen, this job is bigger than anyone thinks. Just because it doesn't count as a school grade, which is our big focus now is, okay, what our graduation rate, which I'm not saying is not important. It's very important. But, I'm glad I'm where I'm at to try to make a difference for, years down the road when it comes down to athletics.
Oh, yeah. And outside of academics, no other program touches more students than the athletic program. So, yeah, those principals and superintendents, we're the ones keeping things off of their desk that relates to that group of kids and parents.
And our superintendent does say it's the number one dropout program that we have in our school system.
Oh, without question. Okay.
Without question.
Mark, one of the things that we've tried to do with the podcast is to share what in our profession we call best practices. Now, you've been at a number of schools as an assistant, as an AD, and now as a district AD. So I'm going to put you on the spot. What's one or two things that you have seen at your schools or even schools in your area that you would, humbly brag on? Boy, we do this better than anybody. We do this better than anybody in the state.
Well, again, I don't know if we do it better than anybody in the state, but I do think we do a lot of things right here. And I think the reason why we do it is because our district leaders believe now they're administrators, and that's why they're called activity coordinators. So they get a bigger rope, to do things. We have many demands, and you're doing it with our professional development academy too. I mean, I try, and I think I do a lot of professional development for our activity coordinators, and in many different areas. Even I even bring in some Marzano stuff to make sure that they're getting educated on a different spectrum. So I think we do that very well. I think I walked the walk, which makes them walk the walk and become better leaders. I think, weekly, now we have, WebEx calls, but, every week that's what I have to do. I mean, my leaders down, that direct me expect me to be doing my job 100% of the time. So I think expectations from our district helps out on best practices. Now, for example, we know that there's a shortage of officials. 100%, everybody knows it. So what do you do about it? Well, 2 years ago, I knew this. So when I did get this job, I went to my powers to be, and we developed an officiating class and got the stamp of approval from the top down. And we have a very good relationship with Genoa, our officials association, and they come in and do guest speaking and everything. And we actually are promoting and bringing officials to our county, so we do not have to have where we have to move games and all that. I think that's one thing that I can brag on, that we have done phenomenal, because we've never had to move a game. And again, I'm over 10 middle schools and 8 high schools. We have a great working relationship with our officials association. They have plenty, and their motto is to promote and recruit. And so that's one of the programs I think we do better. And I don't know all the programs out there, but I'm just telling you, that's one of the ones I believe that we're in the forefront. We also have internships for our activity coordinators now that I developed last year, and it's a paid internship through our entrepreneurship department. So that helps out now on, some of our older activity coordinators are not tech savvy, but who's more tech savvy than our students? So not that they get to put anything out there, but they are mentoring our activity coordinators on the new technology, which I think is great for us. I believe our communications department, it promotes athletics, probably to the highest, like more than any, like my district in Indiana, but that was a long time ago. But I think they put athletics on the forefront to where that gets out there, and so everyone gets excited about athletics. Coaches council. We have a coaches council to where some school now have student athlete council to where they find out problems. So I have a coaches council because I want to know what we can do to make their lives easier. We know that it's not the pay. You average it out, you make about 13, 14 cents an hour by coaching. So they're there for the right reasons. So I try to make sure that any hoop that they have to jump through that's gonna cause them to get frustrated, I want to stop that. So have a coaches council, and we talk about many things on how to make sure that coaches are treated right, and that, parents are kept in check. And I think that's something we do really well here.
I think anything that is directly tied to, communication, as we've talked about, communicating with our stakeholders, our kids, our families, our coaches, and again, presents the school in a positive light, is going to reap big rewards. Your internship program, I think is wonderful. I think on both ends, helping those old ADs like me learn a few new tricks, and hopefully taking that younger person and exposing them to a little bit of experience and life lessons. It's going to help them down the road when they're sitting in that same chair. So very cool. Another question we've been talking about with our interviews has to do with COVID. And again, we're recording this in January. For those of you who have been listening, you know that Florida has been one of the states that's pretty much been back at full speed. There were some pockets in our state that got a little bit later start. But Mark, as of today, share with our listeners, what's going on with Collier County, not just as far as return to play, but also with academics return to school. What's going on?
Okay, so our county, obviously the Department of Health kind of runs what we can and cannot do and gives us kind of stipulations for our school system since we're one of those public entities. And we are the largest, population or the business in Collier County. So there's no other business that has more employees than our school system. So we work hand in hand, weekly phone calls with our Department of Health. And, besides developing our return to play, we obviously, the governor's orders, we did open up our campuses, and we started with, 40% in school, 60% out of schools, because you had to do the online version. As more time passed, and we didn't allow you to opt out. Like if you opted out, you didn't get to come back until the quarter, and then you can come into our brick and mortar, we call it. So we have had, now we're about 80%, 20%. So it's trending in the right direction, because what we have found out is that a lot of our students online academically were falling. Their grades were declining. So, it's very important to their emotional side as well as getting into school. So, our school system bought masks, the pull-up ones, the fishing, whatever they're called, bought the masks, bought 2 masks for every student. And remember, we have 50,000 students. Bought the buffs. We, every place you look, you have sanitizer. I mean, did everything we possibly can to make sure that there's a safe environment. Our number one goal. And, COVID makes you think that it made us think a lot outside the box on how we're going to do this, how we're going to social distance, how we're going to maneuver our classrooms. Testing right now, which our finals are next week, is unique because we have to bring the students from out that are online right now into our schools as well to test. So we're right now they're brainstorming every possible way how we're going to get everybody, because now you can't put the desks right next to each other. You have to have 6 feet apart in the space. You don't have rooms in school. In our schools and our gyms, every one of our gyms are double gyms. So we have huge facilities, and we're having a hard time to adapt to that. Lunches, we have 1 lunch hour. We always had 1 lunch hour because we have these huge courtyards and huge schools. And now we have 3. We've had to adjust everything to make sure that we can, have our students in the healthiest atmosphere they can. But COVID has been a mental strain on teachers, coaches, athletic director, every person in our system it has affected. I don't know where we go from here. Is there going to, what we're thinking now, there's going to be another big spike, right? Because everybody gathered for Christmas or the winter break, and now they're going to come. So in the next couple of weeks, we're anticipating to see a big spike, which that shuts down programs. Sometimes it shuts down schools. Sometimes it shuts down classrooms. So, COVID can't go away fast enough, in my opinion.
But I know if you're like most Florida schools, you've already finished fall, and winter is, you're well into winter sports, which for Florida is basketball, soccer, and wrestling primarily. How did the fall sports go with your fans? Did you have a certain percentage? Was that well received? Any challenges from a sports standpoint?
Well, here's how it started off, which I guess it makes it a little easier. So our Department of Health said no fans right off the bat. So we were one of the first ones to come out and say no fans. And then that sparked, and it wasn't my decision, but everyone thinks it's my decision, right? So, because ESPN Radio tried to get an interview with me because I am out of my mind for not allowing any fans into the arena. So that was a funny but real thing that was out there. But our Department of Health in the beginning said, we're not going to have any fans. And then they, because our numbers were pretty high, Collier County's numbers were pretty high. So then they came out and said, you can have the home school can have 2 household members. You had to be in that household to come to the game. So every student athlete received 2 tickets. And at that time, cheerleading was not even going to exist because the Department of Health said it's not essential to the game at this point in time. So from that August 31st or whatever, when they came out with it, to our first home game, we went with no fans to having a few fans. And then as the season progressed, we allowed because we have huge bands. I mean, when I say huge bands, our average band here is 200 plus. So we can't not have the cheerleaders, the football players, or band members. So that's why we were limited to just home. They gave us, when our stadiums fit about 3,500 normally. But when you take 6 feet two dots because now it's 2 per household, and then 6 feet in all directions, that number goes down drastically. So we could only fit in our stadiums our band members at 6 feet, which took over the whole visitor side plus portable ones that we have on hand. And then our home side, obviously just the football players itself. So we were limited to 2 tickets per athlete, per home athlete. And then obviously 2 tickets for the band members' parents and 2 tickets for the cheerleaders. And that was it. So that's how our fall went. Basketball now, and volleyball went the same way. But volleyball, we allowed 2 tickets per, because there's only 15 on a team. So we allowed 2 tickets per family household per team. So, basically you had 60 people in the gym. And our gyms, like I said, are huge. But that was it. That was what the Department of Health, wanted us to do. They made us put a fan in too to blow around and circulate the air. However they wanted us to do it, we followed the guidance of our Department of Health. Now for basketball, we're continuing with, 2 household members per athlete for basketball. So we're still at its exact same protocols as volleyball. Soccer, we don't have many issues about not letting people in because obviously I wish soccer was more, more attended, but it's not. So really it hasn't affected soccer except for the 6 feet on the sideline staying apart and all the sanitation, that's going on. Wrestling, we are, if you have a dual meet, it's going to be treated exactly like, volleyball and basketball. You can have 2 people, but if it's a dual meet, if you have more than 3 teams, no fans. Now all of our gyms are equipped with the National Federation streaming now, so we did get cameras in every one of our gyms and every one of our stadiums, so they can still watch it. But if they choose to have a tournament, we can't have that many student athletes in the gyms with parents and be safe. So that's where we're at today. Things change weekly. We all know that, but things change weekly on if the Department of Health, if we get another spike, they might take away fans from us. But that's where we've been. We haven't been, and we don't sell them online. They get it. They get a check. You get checked off at the gate when you show your ID. So that's where we're at in our county right now.
Yeah, that's probably one of the more restrictive plans. But again, everybody, they do what is best for their school, for their situation. Quick question: you mentioned the streaming. Is that with the Pixelot, the NFHS program? Yeah.
Yeah.
We have that on our main field outdoors for football, soccer, and lacrosse. Football does their own stuff with Huddle. But we did the Huddle Focus camera in our gyms, but both seem to be working very well. Great service for our parents and our fans. Mark, next area is a little more serious. We've been talking to athletic directors on the topic of social awareness, or social justice, if you will. You and I were talking very briefly before we started recording. Here's my question. What are some things that we can do as athletic administrators? What are some things that we can do better in this area of social awareness? How can we better serve our kids, our families, our program?
Well, I think so. Besides the social awareness, I think a lot of current issues in our high schools right now are recruiting qualified coaches. If you get good people that are going to mentor our students, they're going to set, they're going to put, they're going to have them disciplined. They're going to have them just better people. And it's hard. And it goes back to what I said before. I believe it's because of all the hoops we make them jump through at this point in time, and how underappreciated coaches are. They're not out there. They're given their time basically, for very, very little pay. And unfortunately, the few bad apples, the few bad parents that we have, we spend 90% of our time with them. And I think it takes away from everything else. So, my job is to do everything I can for my activity coordinators, which their job is to do everything they can for their coaches. So it starts with me on how how it rolls downhill. You said, earlier about I make sure our activity coordinators have everything that they have to be successful. And a lot of it is educating them on, how to hire, who to look for, how to recruit. Unfortunately, sometimes there's only one person applying for the job, and it's either that coach or no coach. And in those situations, that's when we have a mentorship to make sure, because there's always society rules and then there's school rules. Because when you're a club coach and you're whatever outside the school system, you think you can do all this stuff where you're tied up in a school system because it's different rules. And those are the big things I see on, people bringing their beliefs on win at all costs, and that's all that matters, to we're developing and mentoring student athletes for the future. And I think we do a good job of talking through it on our conference calls and everything. I think we do a good job at making sure we're putting the right people in the right spots on the bus. And that's one of them that I think is a challenge right now that we're having. Managing those enthusiastic parents. That's where it starts. It's trying to get a grip on them from the get-go. And I always tell them, like, I used to have a pamphlet at when I was the AD at Marin Collier that said what you can talk to the coach about and what you can't talk to the coach about, because they're not just going to get in a firing squad, put in a room and let you degrade a coach. Now, if it's playing time, that's their decision. We hire them for them. Come talk to me about it. I hired this coach to make those decisions, but I think, that has become a challenge for some good coaches that's been in our systems for a while that just said, it's too much. I'm done. The parents are too brutal. And it's not a lot of them. So I don't want to say our parents, we have bad people, because it's not. It's that 1% that takes up 90% of our time, because we're dealing with that 1%. Economically right now, our school, we're in an affluent area, Naples, Florida. Our school system is hurting, which means our athletic programs are hurting. We limited their attendance, which and everybody knows. The school doesn't give you money for your athletic program. Your gates give you money for your athletic program. And the economic part right now is real, and it's real for us. And again, I knock on wood, and I'm blessed to be in an area where there's wealth. Our schools are hurting. I can't imagine other school systems, but I'm telling you, when ours is hurting, I know that other people's are hurting right now. And we have conversations every week about, where's the money come from? What are we cutting? What are we doing? We're not going to have JV programs, and our superintendent is pro sports. So she has helped in different unique ways, but the longer this goes on, I'm worried more about next year, because these are the funds. Usually you make it from the year before, and then that's going to be your budget for the following year. Now the budget's not there. It's gone. You spent everything. What are you going to do for next year? So right now I'm in the process of figuring that out. Our county is going to say, okay, what are we going to do? What's this going to look like here in another couple months? So those are some, we talked about the specialization. I think that's a problem. for all of our sports right now. And finding good, obviously it's hard to find coaches, and finding good volunteers and coach, that people are going to be mentoring our students. I think right now, obviously the other day with the Capitol and all the stuff that's going on right now, the most important thing to me is our student athletes' mindset, their health, their well-being. And I think that's one of our problems, that how are we going to deal with all this, and how are they dealing with it? Because now some of them are at home, they don't get to that gatherings and the support from all their others. Mental health is real, and we're experiencing it here. So how we're dealing with it, we have programs, but right now we can't get our hands on them because they're not all in school yet. So that's where I feel our big issues are right now.
And again, Mark, I really appreciate you sharing your heart on those. You mentioned, something that really stuck out for me, making sure that you're getting the right people in there to coach, because, those coaches are those leaders, those mentors, the famous Billy Graham quote, a coach will impact, more people in a year than most people will in a lifetime. I'm curious, at my school, and again, my schools, we're an independent school, we're smaller, but we are very, very blessed with our upper administration. They see the value in having teacher coaches, and almost every single one of my varsity head coaches, and we have a ton of sports, either teaches or works full-time on our campus. We've got some community coaches, and we have some great ones, but what's your ratio for your schools? And do you feel, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but do you feel that there's a support within your district to hire teacher coaches?
So right now, middle school wise, we're probably 90% teachers, which is phenomenal. I would say our high school, without actually looking at the numbers from every school in front of me, I would say we're probably 60-40, which we have a huge amount of lay coaches out there. And because at one time, let's just talk about 10 years ago, I would say our numbers in our county would have been 80-20. Because of the lack of funds that you get paid for coaching and what is entitled in the berateness that they're getting at this point in time, it's not worth it. They're not leaving their teaching jobs. They're just leaving coaching because they're getting their majority of their salaries for teaching, and that's their number one job. Why would they want to put themselves at this point in time in that position? So, yes, I think our county definitely thinks that if you're a good coach, you're a good teacher. If you're a good teacher, you can be a good coach. I think those hand in hand. And yes, if you have more on your resume, we're going to hire those people. But right now we have teaching shortages. We have coaching shortages. So we try, but we can't make somebody coach.
Right.
So the priority's there. It's just right now, because of all the negative press on the 1% of parents that actually make this, an issue, that's unfortunately what they see. And it's just not worth it for them. And I'm trying to change that. Like I said, this is my third year in this position. And that's one of my challenges. Now, how I'm going, in 3 years, let's talk and I can tell you how it went, what I did wrong, what direction I'm going now. But yes, all our principals at our high schools definitely would do the the coach teacher type deal when there's a need.
That's great to hear. And hopefully, again, I mentioned the idea of a pendulum, but hopefully that pendulum swinging back the other way. I think you were kind of like me when you got out of college, hey, I want to teach, I want to coach. Where do I go? I got to coach 4 sports at the junior high. That's fine. Sign me up. Okay. Now I interviewed a kid a couple of years ago from our local university, and it was, what do you mean middle school? I'm a varsity assistant. And I go,
everybody's an expert, and again, I hate to stereotype different eras, the millennials or whatever you want to talk about, but it's a me now society type deal. It's like, well, what am I getting? Instead of me, I wanted to give. That's all I wanted to do. Is I wanted to, what I experienced in life, I wanted to do that to somebody else. And unfortunately, now pay for teaching is obviously we just got that pay raise that the governor put in there for first year teachers, where get some people interested in it. But it, right now, every district probably is not filled with certified teachers at this point in time.
Yeah, like we said, maybe that pendulum is going to swing. We'll see what happens. Mark, it's been great getting to know you these last couple of months with FIAAA. I didn't mention that Mark's also on our board of directors, so get to see him. We actually have a board meeting coming up next week. Yep. But we're not quite done today. We always like to wrap up with what we call the Athletic Director's Toolbox. We've already established that you're a veteran AD, very successful athletic director. But right now, I'm going to task you. You're going to send one of those interns out on their very first job as an AD. But I'm only going to let you put 3 things in their toolbox. What 3 items are going to go in Mark Rosenbaum's athletic director toolbox? Well,
most people would say probably rules, procedures, responsibilities of the job, making sure you know those. I'm going to go out on a different direction. Limit your time with the grumblers and complainers. To me, that would be the number one thing, because I don't want you to get a bad taste in your mouth right off the bat. There's 90%, 95% think everything's great, and the 5% that don't spend all your time on there, because it'll just frustrate you. Manage all meetings. Do not go in there without a plan or without set rules, because it will get out of hand quickly and you're never going to get it back. And first impressions are everything on that managing the meeting. And to me, what was very successful for me, and what my coaches, and I believe they followed me, is the chain of command. I really believed it. So when a parent had an issue with a coach, they did not come to me first. They tried. And I would say, I'm not talking to you until you have a meeting with the coach. Now, if it does not get resolved, then we'll have a meeting with all of us. I said, but you're not going to jump that chain of command. And the coaches understood that. And when I was at Barron Collier High School, just to toot a little bit, is that we won, when I was there 5 years, we've won the Sunshine State Conference, or the Sunshine State Award, twice when I was there. And it wasn't because of me. It was because I had great coaches doing what they were supposed to do. Because all of our programs, when you played Barron Collier, you knew you were going to be in a dogfight no matter what program we had, because they're well disciplined and they know the game and they're good people. That chain of command was so huge for me, because the AD before me did not do that. And I remember when one of my ADs sided with a parent before even talking to me, or listened to the parent, how frustrated I was. And it's not going to make me want to run through a wall for you. So that was a big deal, that the chain of command. So I would go with those 3. And obviously you got to listen well. I'll throw in that 4th. But those are the 3 things to put in your toolbox that I think will make you successful.
Yeah, and again, it's funny how they all kind of relate to this overall idea of communication and, doing the right thing by your coaches. Great stuff. Mark, thanks so much for sharing. Continued success down there in Collier County, Naples area. And I guess I can say I'll see you next week in Orlando.
Absolutely. And I appreciate everything that you're doing for our state with athletic administrators.
Well, thank you.
That's why I'm still continuing to grow. Listen, I want to get my CMAA soon. I'll talk to you about the project, at a different time. But I appreciate what you do, and obviously these podcasts are awesome. So that might be something that I might start doing for my own county at this point in time.
I did that little workshop for NIAAA on starting a podcast for your school or your school district.
Yep.
To our listeners, remember that these Zoom interviews are being posted on the FIAAA Educational Athletic Director YouTube channel. And until next time, thanks for listening. Come back again for another episode of the Educational AD.